To create a new customer tenant in Acronis Cyber Protect Cloud, start from the partner level, select New Customer, and give it a name. I'm going to walk through this the first time real quick just to show you the idea. Then we'll go through the options in more detail the second time. So here we're adding an administrator for this tenant. And now I can just hit create, and now I've created the customer tenant. That's a very simple example. Now we'll go back and do it again for another one and discuss some of the options there to consider, some of which are fairly important. So again, new customer. And now we'll go through here and create a different customer tenant, give it a name, and you'll see that it defaults to this 30-day trial mode. You can just leave it that way. It doesn't affect the functionality. It just means that you don't get billed for the first 30 days as an MSP, and then it'll automatically roll over to production mode after 30 days. There's also this advanced section, which you can basically just ignore. I'll show it real quickly just to see. Defaults to managed by service provider, which is by far the most common approach. If you have a client that wants to self-manage and doesn't want you as the MSP to have any access to their tenant, then you could switch it to this managed by customer mode. But even in the default mode, you can create accounts for your client if you want them to have some level of access to their tenant. There's also this checkbox here for compliance mode, which you definitely should not click unless you're absolutely sure that this is what you want. It's very uncommon. This locks down the tenant in a way that basically is not compatible with the way most MSPs would work with their clients. And most of these you can disable selectively in a normal tenant. And if you do enable this, you can't turn it off for a tenant. So basically just ignore that. Basically just go with the defaults on this page here. Now this is an important part here. You do need to create at least one administrator for each customer tenant. The reason for this is primarily because when you register a machine or a virtual machine with a tenant, it does need to be tied to an account at the customer tenant level. So I'd suggest thinking of this sort of like a service account. And rather than just putting in your name and email address, put in a login that you'll just make up for the customer tenant and whatever notification address you want to use. So go through and do this. And one of the important things I've done here is this checkbox to split it up into a separate login. If you go with the default where it's just a single field, that acts as the login. The issue with that is that each login does need to be unique. So you need to use a different email address for each one. So it's much better just to split this up, just pick some unique login, some convention like this, client name -admin, and then just use like a standard notification address that you want for yourself. And if you want to have notifications go to the client, there's lots of ways to do that separately, but don't put the client's email address in here. You can fill in additional details. Really, it really doesn't matter unless you want to for your purposes. I could go and hit create again like I did the first time, but instead I'm going to use this option here to customize services. There's a few things here. One is this would let you turn off certain billing modes and features within them. You can do that. I wouldn't suggest doing that when you're getting started. It's better just to leave everything enabled so you see the full functionality. And the billing is just based on actual usage month to month. So there's no downside really to having things enabled. So this would leave that, but the thing I do want to point out here and suggest is to come down to file signature and turn this off. This is a feature that's being phased out later in 2026. It's not that commonly used, and there's a couple wrinkles that happen when you leave that on. So it's really better just to turn that off. Just ignore that since that feature is going away anyway. So go with those changes. You don't necessarily need to change anything else here. And then you can come and create. And so now we've got a second customer tenant. Now we'll see, these are some of the options that we saw earlier. So there are 3 billing modes. So it's defaulting to one of the billing modes. I could go and switch it to one of the other 2. I'm not going to get into all the details here about the differences between them, but you as the MSP can decide which model makes most sense on a per customer tenant basis, and it can be switched. You can also enable and disable certain functionality here. Again, I don't suggest disabling anything initially. It's better just to see all the functionality. Some cases where you might want to do that later on would be mostly like related to, say, setting quotas for certain things. Like if your agreement with a client was to back up a certain number of Microsoft 365 seats, you could set a quota for that here, for example. You could also set a quota for, say, cloud storage. There's typically not a reason to set a quota for things like machines if you're going to be registering those for them. So those are some of the options there. And then some general things. If you want to change the customer name, that's easy to do. There's some profile information here. This typically you can ignore unless you're going to use the Acronis PSA functionality, in which case some of this will tie in for billing purposes. But to start out, let's go just more of that. So now we've got these 3 customer tenants in the trial mode, in the certain billing mode, and that's the starting point. Then to actually get into a customer tenant, you can click on one of them here and go into them. So now we're down in the protection console. I'm not going to get into the details here, except to just point out. So this is where you would go and add machines and agents and everything. Other videos that cover that, but from a tenant management and setup point of view, so I'll point out that once you're down at this level, you could switch to a different customer tenant, go to this all customers view, and suit machines and manage certain things at this level. And then you can also click that manage link there, which will take you back up to the partner level of your console.